it's not a complicated feeling. It's a feeling of tremendous grief and a feeling of extreme vulnerability. We're no longer safe in our criticism and commentary, where it used to feel as though it was a kind of detached, observational perch that we'd be at. Now, I think we all feel in the middle of events, and that what you say can have consequences, and there are things at stake, and there's a certain amount of risk. And I think implicit in the whole thing is the question of, are we really at the beginning of something that this is just an example of? Are we at the beginning of a time when anybody, anywhere, can be rubbed out for an idea? And so the only response is more expression. And my big concern is the shutting down. Because in this country, there was a huge wave of self-censorship that came after 9/11. Nobody, almost nobody in the United States could discuss 9/11 in the context of why. Why did it happen? And our president at the time pronounced the official reason for it happening as being that they hate us for our freedom. And that was sort of the end of the debate for a while, except for Chalmers Johnson and a few people who talked about blowback, that we have an involvement in the Middle East. Does anybody care how deep that involvement is, and what it was, and what we did there, and what we continue to do there, and what the United States' role was in that? No, that didn't happen. People were fired for trying to bring such things up and opposing the war on Iraq, which now we all agree was fraudulent and based on lies. That's documented. There's no longer cause for debate on that. But the self-censorship kept that information from flowing. And the information that flowed was wrong. Dick Cheney was a big purveyor of false information about all of that. So what we in media noticed at that time, there was a great seizing up of expression and paralysis. And I think that this creates an environment for more of that, for more paralysis. So my feeling is to say as much as possible, no, fight that. Fight the right wing that will enjoy this. I know I did an illustration, I think I sent that to you, of the blood of the Charlie Hebdo massacre feeding the tree of extreme right-wing politics. And that's my big fear, is the paralysis that I saw here in 2001, 2002, 2003, that stopped us from thinking. It stopped us from functioning intellectually in a successful, coherent way, and that this will take place in liberal democracies all over the world. This censorship comes from fear. News is a business, in this country especially. There's a lot of money changing hands because of news. People consume news for entertainment purposes, mostly, I think. And that leads to a misunderstanding of what news is. To me, news is what's happening to somebody else that is going to happen to you next. If it affects you down the road, it's news. If it's something about Kim Kardashian or Miley Cyrus, it's not affecting you. And that's not news, it's entertainment. So there's a blending of that and a confusion of that. And as a result, people don't want anything that's going to upset the apple cart, make somebody cancel a subscription, make somebody not want to watch, make somebody nervous.
Or even the advertisers?
Advertisers and consumers. There are a lot of consumers who don't want to be made upset by the news. This is an important thing. People watching the news on television want to go to bed feeling good. Or people in the morning when they get up watching the news, they're eating their breakfast. They don't want to spit up their oatmeal because they're seeing a dead body or there's something that's going to be told to them that's deeply upsetting to them. Like
Right.
climate change is coming and your children will not have an economy or an environment to live in any kind of decent, respectful, civilized way. So everything is couched, everything is hidden, everything is shrouded in a comfortable veneer. So then, I think that's where American censorship comes from. There's a commercial straitjacket here. And it's a terrible thing. Pollsters have a word for people who vote without knowing what the hell they're voting about. And they use the term low information voter. That's a very euphemistic way of talking about people who are ignorant, but still going to the polls and voting anyway.
Are they addicted to voting?
No, they are voting usually in a presidential election because it's a big event. It's like the World Series or Super Bowl or the Oscars. Everybody's in. They're all enjoying this. It's a pageant. It's a pageant.
Right.
Okay. And so they'll go to the polls and not vote about an issue. They won't see a connection between what a candidate says and what he or she is about. Right. They won't ask, well, what's this person about? Who's supporting him? Who's funding him? They'll say, oh, he looks like a nice guy. I like his smile. I'll have a beer with him. I met George W. Bush. I covered him. He's a lovely man. You could have a beer with George W. Bush, and he's just the sweetest guy. The worst president in the history of the United States. This is what we have to fight against. We have to fight against self-censorship. We have to find opportunities, as I do as a freelancer, to find opportunities where I can say real things with pictures and try to get them into this publication and that. So for me, it's largely about proposing stories and suggesting projects and doing books and you hope that there are spots, little places where you can find editors and art directors who are willing to be rude, willing to say uncomfortable things.
And do you think
I would like to say yes, but I don't have evidence to back it up. I would like to say the people of the United States would embrace satire and ideas in print. We have our sliver of such people. They subscribe to The Nation, to Mother Jones. They read The New Yorker. They'll watch Daily Show. They'll watch Democracy Now! They'll read books by Chomsky and Howard Zinn and Barbara Ehrenreich. They're open to having their lives invaded with true and uncomfortable things that can then be made fun of, and so that everybody gets the joke. And then, honest people like me, we live off of that sliver,
Right.
that tiny, urban educated slice of America. People who will spend money on New York Review of Books. That's the group.
But it's
people.
a minority of the
It's
whole
small,
population, a very small chunk.
minority. But it includes most journalists, even those journalists who are working for mainstream networks and other publications who are always mitigating how they can take this information they're getting and then kind of process it, pasteurize it for the American people to be given in small increments, sugar-coated, where we suggest that the country was founded on war and racism and greed, but we don't say it
Out
in
loud.
concentrated ways.
Right.
We suggest this, and we thread it, we marble it into the meat of news, which includes, stories about puppies and Kim Kardashian and Dancing with the Stars. So we hope that in the way it gets marbleized into media, the thrust gets through. Sometimes there are movements in the country where there's so much pain that there's no amount of bullshit that can cover over the truth of it. And that happened during Vietnam. I'm old enough to remember the 60s and how, after a while, Vietnam could not be lied about anymore. Similarly with cigarettes. Enough people died of cancer so that the tobacco industry could not produce enough media to cover it over. It just was, the truth was overwhelming because everybody knew someone who was affected by cigarettes. After a while, it was just too much, an avalanche of truth. During Great Depression, avalanche of truth, too much pain, sorry. Yeah, that's fantastic. I think it's fantastic. When we talk about cartoons in mass media, it's almost always because we misunderstand what they're about, what they're supposed to be doing. We had in this country Barry Blitz cover for the New Yorker. I don't know if you remember that, but he made fun of the mythology about Obama when he was running for president, so he portrayed him as exactly what the right wing called him. It turned him into a radical Muslim, fist bumping with his wife who looked like Angela Davis. There was all this iconography that made fun of the stereotypes that were flying around about Obama. A lot of people misunderstood that because they didn't get the joke. A bit strange to the idea of irony. Having a regular day every year when we collectively discuss, recognize, appreciate caricature, cartoon, satire, strident political commentary, thoughtful, strident political commentary, is going to be an opportunity for us to enhance and deepen the understanding of what we do. So I think that would contribute to a diminution of the misunderstanding, which is a huge, huge goal, a terrific idea.